Aloha, this is Emily Thoreau-Threat, host of the Grief and Happiness podcast. Every Friday, I share with you my love notes, giving you a little something to think about as you navigate your grief journey, finding happiness expanding along your way. Every Tuesday, I post my regular podcast, sharing wonderful conversations with people you can relate to and offer you encouraging ideas and helpful inspiration. And I invite you to our Grief and Happiness Alliance gatherings for free every week on Zoom. Information provided in the show notes. Aloha. Welcome to my podcast today, Taking Care of Yourself. I had a good friend who was there for me years ago when I was struggling with my grief. My parents had died, and I had such a big hole in my life. My dad died first, suddenly, and I had so much to do with helping Mom deal with all that needed to be done. And I had family to take care of and 2 jobs, and what that all led for me was blocking my dealing with my own grief. My mom lived a few more years. I had so much to do for her that I ended up bringing her to live with me, which was challenging because of the effects of the brain tumor she had. For the last few months of her life, she finally consented to have someone stay with her around the clock at her own home. She lived an hour away from me, so there were many hours of driving back and forth. And after she died, she left so much more for me to take care of. I simply didn't have the time to grieve. So I tucked my grief away, where it seemed to grow and fester. All that time, I had a close friend. He knew my mom, and he dealt with the death of his mother years before. He was safe. I didn't have to put on my public front that I had been using for work and my other activities. I didn't have to be strong like I felt I needed to be for my children and my husband, who were all close to my mom and relied on me to support them through their grief. He was just there with no demands or expectations of me. I could tell him anything about what I was experiencing, and I knew he wouldn't judge me. He just listened to me as I felt sorry for myself or got frustrated with the situation. And he didn't tell me what I needed to do. I really didn't want advice. I just wanted to talk. There were also times when I didn't want to talk, and he was okay with that. He didn't make me feel guilty about what I wasn't doing. And I know that he couldn't make me feel anything, but having others have expectations of me was a challenge. I only took 1 day off from my teaching job when my mom died and 1 day off for her funeral. Even though I worked full-time, I was not entitled to bereavement leave. I was expected to continue working at the same level without even noticing how hard and how fragile I felt. When he noticed that I wasn't eating, he'd bring food for me. He didn't ask if I wanted something to eat. He just showed up with familiar foods he knew I would eat. And he'd eat with me, knowing that I probably wouldn't eat it if he wasn't there. He also noticed when something needed fixing and just fixed it for me without asking. His kindness allowed me to breathe when I felt under great pressure. I've been asked about self-care and what it actually means for grieving in answering that question. I reflected on my friend. Caring for myself, I followed his example, which would be a good start for you to do with your own self-care. First, I didn't put pressure on myself. I didn't have to live up to anyone else's expectations. When I didn't want to be around people, I chose to stay at home and read and watch a movie or take a bubble bath. When I did want to go someplace, I would ask a friend to go with me, which provided a buffer or an escape for something I had that came up that I didn't want to face at the moment. If I wanted to talk to someone, I would make a phone call. And if I didn't want to talk to someone but needed to vent with feelings, I got out my journal and wrote until I didn't need to write anymore. I would remember that I needed to eat, and I would make wise choices about which food would serve me best. I did, however, stop by the bakery that was close to campus for a maple bar and milk when I went in the early hours. Treating myself occasionally was something especially feeling good for me. And I would smile. I would notice when something needed to be done and take care of it. This felt good too, knowing that I was capable of taking good care of myself. I also started working on my smile. I realized that I didn't have to have someone there to smile at. I could just smile just for me. And when I did smile, I felt better. I would practice smiling in the mirror, or I would find something funny to read or watch on television. Smiling seemed to release something inside of me that allowed me to feel good. I encourage you to think about someone special who's been taking care of you, or think of a friend who was there when you needed one. Think also about any kindness people have done for you. Write these things in your journal. Then, when you're ready for some self-care, do these things for you. Pamper yourself. Wrap yourself up in your own love. Remember how special you are and live your best life. That's the greatest self-care. Thanks for listening. And be sure to order your Grief and Happiness Handbook and cards on Amazon. All profit from these sales go directly to the Grief and Happiness Alliance nonprofit organization to support these podcasts and all that the organization does to provide comfort and support to those who are dealing with grief and loss. Mahalo. Thank you.